Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is nutrition, and we're going to cover metabolism adjustments to meal timing. So this is in regards to a question I had gotten recently in a conversation. And the question in a roundabout way was this: if you eat too low of calories, the body slows down its metabolism to adjust to the low amount. And that's true. So if you eat too low of calories, the body does slow down its metabolism to adjust to that new low caloric intake. The rest of the question says, and then fat loss becomes difficult. And that's true, because then the body isn't burning as many calories at rest. So therefore it's not going to burn as much or use up as much calories in regards to of whatever calories you eat. So it's going to become harder and harder to put the body into a deficit. The last part of the question is, but how long do you have to be low for that to start to happen? So that's what we're going to talk about today, is if you eat too low of calories. So say you're really pushing your caloric intake down, whether you're getting ready for like a contest prep, if you're doing like an aesthetic sport like bikini, fitness, figure, wellness, bodybuilding, that kind of stuff. So if they're pushing their calories down to compete for that, or if somebody's pushing their calories down to compete in like a strength event because they have to make a weight class, or whether someone's pushing their calories down just for general fat loss. So if you're pushing your calories down and you're really trying to strip off some body weight, how can we do that without causing the metabolism to downregulate and actually become harder and harder to continue to make progress? So typically people, when they get this wrong, what they'll see is that they have to do more and more activity and less food in order to keep progressing. So they do an hour of cardio that turns into 2 hours of cardio a day. That turns into 3 hours of cardio a day. Then they do, a diet of say 1,600 calories. It turns into 1,400, turns into 1,200, and then it turns into 1,000 calories a day. So eventually they're eating nothing and they're spending all day in the gym. They feel like shit. They're kind of flat and watery, no strength, generally just a miserable experience. So how do we avoid that? Well, what we're going to look through today is going to explain that. So the first thing we have is I just want to discuss about the effects of missing a single meal. So when you have a normal meal patterning down, like meal timing, so we talk about in podcast 41, I mention this all the time, that we discuss the top components of a diet, whether that's a diet to lose weight, diet to gain muscle mass, diet for sport performance, whatever the diet might be for, it's just a structured way of eating. For any diet to be successful, the most significant component is calories. The second most significant component is actually having enough protein intake. And the third most significant is meal timing. So what meal timing refers to is kind of like, do you eat your calories when you use them? So if you undereat during the day, then you have a huge caloric deficit, and then you overeat at night, you gain body fat. That's why pretty much everybody on the planet is fat. So we don't eat because we deem ourselves to be too busy during the day. We get home, we're hungry as hell, we're lazy and sitting on our butt, so we eat everything under the sun. So that's why people get fat, is because they mess up meal timing. Now, they do mess up, caloric intake in certain ways, because most commonly people go through periods of undereating and overeating. So in the periods of undereating, their body kind of becomes stressed. There's a lot of other effects happening. So whether their calories were to balance out or not, the person's never going to look their best, never going to feel their best if meal timing isn't correct. So if you put fuel into your body when you need the fuel, the body runs well. If you don't put fuel into the body when it needs fuel, it still runs, but it runs pissed off with a lot of cortisol and stress, and it is not good for long-term health. So when we miss a single meal, that's actually a pretty significant thing. So the clients I work with, we try our best to establish a consistent timing of food. Then we get an amount that allows them to feel comfortable from one meal to the next. So if one client has 5 hours between their meals, that's fine. If another client has 3 hours between their meals, that's fine. If another client has 2 hours between breakfast and mid-morning, but then 6 hours between mid-morning and lunch, whatever the combination is, it's fine. As long as they're consistent day to day, because we can then feed them the correct calories per meal based on whatever their activity level is day to day. And what ends up happening is the body starts to be able to kind of predict, in a sense, that it feels comfortable knowing you're going to give it enough calories. So if you're going to give it the fuel it needs, it doesn't need to hold on to fuel as an emergency. And holding on to fuel is body fat. So body fat is stored calories. So if we eat inconsistently, even if we eat kind of an adequate amount of calories, but the body doesn't know when the calories are coming, the body will hold on to more stored energy to make up for the energy gaps that your inconsistency is creating. Whereas if you can become more consistent with your meal timing, the body does then not feel the need to protect its own reserves as much, and the person can actually look leaner, be leaner actually, and feel better. So getting mealtime is extremely important. So when you miss a meal, what ends up happening is the body says, oh crap, where's my energy? You didn't give me any energy. So I had to tap into my reserves. I had to burn off body fat. That sounds good, right? However, the response to that is not good. The body says, well, since I had to tap into my reserves, apparently my reserves are important. So the next time you eat a surplus of calories, it will try to fill in the void of that reserve and actually add more. So it's kind of like if you had $500 in your bank account and every week somebody took $500 from you, you would say, well, this kind of sucks. So I'm going to put like 600, 700 in there so that way I have some extra for myself too. And that's actually what the body does. So if we use some body fat and the body didn't like it, okay, we used it in an inconsistent way or in a shocking way to the body, then it will recoil that response the next time it has a surplus, and it'll try to add back that fat, and if not more. So this is why when people do prolonged caloric cuts, so they just eat nothing for 30 days and lose 30 pounds, then all of a sudden they gain 20, 30, or 40 back once they go back to normal. It's because what you did there was all you did was you shockingly tore fat off the body. The body did not like that process. So the second you went back to regular eating, so because you didn't fix and actually address your correct way of eating, you just ate like a weird, crazy, weird way for 1 month, okay, then you go back to your normal habits that got you fat, those normal habits will make you fat again. So that's how it works. So missing a single meal spikes that response. Our body, it has to burn body fat. It says, oh my gosh, this was kind of dangerous. You know, what if we had to use more of the reserves than what we really had planned for? So let's fill those reserves back up. So the question to when does the body actually downregulate metabolism, the answer to that is actually a longer time frame. So the initial response within a single day of missing a meal is the body wants to replace that body fat the second it can. But it doesn't reduce its metabolism. When we start getting a reduction of metabolism is actually around kind of like the 3 to 4 to 5 day mark, and it really is extremely dependent on the person's body fat levels, their activity levels, and their general caloric type of restriction. So if somebody's extremely overweight, it can be a while until the body downregulates its metabolism, as opposed to somebody who's like super shredded lean on the way to a contest prep. If somebody's highly active, they lift weights a lot and they're super duper active, their body is going to downregulate metabolism faster than somebody who's sedentary. So there are differences in responses. So the time frame I'm giving is general. You might find in certain circumstances or extreme cases that, the person will fall, on either side of this range. But the idea of the range is that it happens within a few days, if not a week, not within a single day. So in podcast number 426, we discuss why eating less isn't good for fat loss. Meaning that if you eat too low of calories, your body freaks out and it has this response of reducing metabolism. So we do answer this question in a way in podcast 426. But I thought it'd be a great way today to kind of retouch on this and maybe present some new information based around it. So what typically happens, and this was part of my conversation with the other person, was the first day we restrict calories, we tend to feel fine. So we feel motivated, we feel great. People who do like fasts, for example, typically the first day or so isn't that miserable because you're motivated, you're feeling great, you still have all the reserves of, everything you ate yesterday or whatnot. So then the second day, the person starts to have some cravings. Like, okay, this kind of stinks, I'm tired. I like a little bit of food, but I got this. The third day, they have intense cravings, and their body's like, feed me now. And they're like, oh my God, I could eat anything. Give me the food and the box that came in. I'll eat the box too. That kind of thing. But if a person can fight through those cravings, if they have a hard enough form or force of motivation, and I've worked with people with nutrition disorders, like eating disorders. So whether it's anorexia, bulimia, bigorexia, which is actually a form of eating disorder, and then there's many others. So many other kind of variations of all that stuff. But if somebody restricts food due to an emotional issue, they're going to have pretty damn good willpower around that. So I've worked with people who've absolutely lost the sensation to feel hunger because they just never gave into it. And they told their body, I don't give a shit if you're hungry. I'm doing this for a reason. Deal with it. So their body absolutely downregulates its metabolism, and they have just insane willpower, and it's hard to get that back, but it can be done. But when you're in trouble, in terms of when does the metabolism start to downregulate, is after those 2 or 3 or 4 days where you have cravings, all of a sudden there's this peace that comes over you. And the body stops sending cravings. Often people celebrate this. So I've talked with somebody recently who was doing a fast, and they said, on day 5, you just kind of tend to feel great. It's not an issue at all. So if you can make it to day 5, you're fine. No! So day 5 means like you're about to die. So when the body stops sending cravings, that's basically it saying, hey, instead of it saying, hey, we need more calories, that's what a craving is. When it stops sending those signals, okay, the cravings, guess what? It doesn't need more calories. Why do you think it doesn't need those calories? Because it's starting to downregulate and figure out how to survive without them. It was sending you signals that said, feed me, feed me, feed me. You kept saying no, no, no. So finally the body says, screw it, I just won't need that much. So it learns how to live off of a budget, so to speak. So it learns how to live off of whatever calories you are giving it. So it will drop any processes, okay? Not necessarily 100% drop them, but it reduces its percentage of give a shit, basically, to each of the processes. And that if it can take, this process needing 50 calories less per day, that process needing 10 calories less per day, that process needing 100 calories less per day. If it can figure out how to give a little bit less to a bunch of different things, that's where it gets its caloric reduction need. So you get a metabolism reduction. So if you are doing a diet, and this is typically for people wanting to lose weight, like we said, it's caloric restrictions, and you have a restriction severe enough that you initially feel fine, then you start to feel like crap, then you have tons of cravings, but then all of a sudden the cravings go away and you report that you feel okay. You might want to be careful of whether those caloric restrictions and that sense of feeling okay is actually the body downregulating. So the only thing that would be kind of a caveat to this is if a person starts a diet and they kind of say, you know what, like I really wish I'd had this food today because I normally do. So I have like some cravings. I have some desires for foods that I shouldn't have. And then all of a sudden they just kind of accept the fact that the diet is happening and say, you know what, I can understand these cravings. I know what the bigger purpose is. I'm okay. I can handle this. That's different. So if someone just accepts the process of a diet, that's different than what we're talking about. What we're talking about here is the process is so severe that the person doesn't necessarily accept it. Their body stops sending signals. So we're talking about the body versus the brain. If you decide that you just don't want to, lay into the cravings at all, and you know your goal and you want to do it. That's different. If the body stops sending signals in times of extreme dieting, that does not mean a good sign. That's not a good thing. Your body is then telling you, fine, I'll live on less. So, that's essentially what you look for. If you miss a single meal in a day, your metabolism doesn't start reducing, but it isn't good because it actually does promote like more fat storage and fat replacement. So it's not good to miss meals at all. But you can come back from a missed meal within that day, if not the next day, totally fine. So it's not going to set you back that much. Whereas if you have a huge restriction and you do it multiple days in a row to the point where you have an intensifying of cravings and all of a sudden the body just kind of stops sending them, that's a bad sign. That's when the metabolism reduces. Okay? So, some practical examples real quick I want to give is if somebody's doing diet preps, so like I've helped people get pro cards in aesthetic sports, and there's pretty extreme dieting in those cases. However, that should be run as you're building a lean physique, not tearing your body down. So way too many people do physique contest preps kind of way off. Now, I mean, aesthetic is in terms of like bikini, fitness, figure, all this stuff. So I don't mean just the category physique. Sorry, I need to be more clear. So in aesthetic competitions, people mess up the diets all the time. They do a bunch of meaningless cardio just to burn off calories. And then they try to eat less and less and less because as soon as they're off the cardio machine, they have no more caloric deficit. So they only get the caloric deficit while the ones they burn, and then have to go eat less throughout the rest of the day. That's absolutely stupid. It's asinine. We've already proven in the fitness world that that's a dumbass way to do it. So if you are working with a prep coach and they have you doing an hour plus of treadmill work, okay, of cardio work a day, they're a horrible prep coach. Okay? Now that can be aggressive in what I'm saying there. But I've helped people get pro cards and they never spent more than 20 minutes in a single time doing cardio. Okay? So you don't need to spend all damn day on cardio, and it's actually pretty much freaking useless. So if you're going to spend time in the gym, do stuff that creates muscle damage. So we talk about in podcast 181 how muscle damage helps you burn more body fat because the damaged muscle needs repaired. So that repair need increases your caloric demand during the time in which the body's trying to repair the muscle, which can be half a day, if not a whole day, if not even longer in certain cases. So you can do an awesome kick-ass leg workout today and then continue to have a higher caloric need due to the recovery needed from that workout for the next 12, 24 plus hours. So rather than doing 1 hour of cardio to where when you step off the machine, you're done. There is no more caloric demand other than your regular basal metabolic rate, your regular caloric usage, daily living, normal stuff. Okay, you can spend an hour doing that, which is stupid. Or you can spend an hour lifting weights, causing muscle damage. And then when you step out of the gym, you're going to continue to have a higher caloric demand. You're going to continue to burn off more body fat while your body tries to repair that muscle. So that's really freaking important that we understand that competition prep diets need to be a process of building a lean physique, not tearing down the current body you have. Okay? Now, what does that look like? That looks like we absolutely lift weights for muscle damage pretty much every day. If not 7 days a week, probably 6. And you might even have to do 2-a-day sessions where you have an hour in the morning, maybe 20 minutes at home, body weight stuff or yoga lattes or, kind of weird stuff at home. So I've helped tons of people do contests where they only had 4 40-minute workouts a week. That's it. Yep. Now, I'm not saying they're the ones that got the pro card, but they go on stage, they look great, they had, six-pack abs. It's just that they were so far out of shape that 40 minutes 4 times a week was plenty. So they'd never done a show before. So first-timers for a show don't need to do what freaking pros do, okay? So as your body gets more resistant to the process, you have to step up your game. So as pros do, like as they've done more and more shows in their career, they do learn better as how to do each prep. but their body also starts to kind of predict and fight the process harder and harder each time. So it's just like if somebody lifts weights for 10 years, what they have to do in year 10 to make progress is much more advanced than what they did in year 1. Hopefully they're working smarter, not harder. Okay? So when you do multiple diets, you should be able to do the diets more correctly rather than having to do more intense, okay, of a diet, if that makes sense. Now, there's some variance there, but that's generally the idea. So if we look at our contest prep clients, typically they're going to have to, like we said, is if the body adjusts every 3 to 5 days to a very low caloric intake, and it would actually start to reduce its metabolism, you want to then create a caloric spike before that happens. So you might have 2 really low days of calories, and then before the body starts to downregulate on the 3rd day, you might give it back to maintenance level of calories. So maybe the first 2 days, I have a 300 calorie reduction below my maintenance level on both days. Then on the 3rd day, I just eat my maintenance level. And your body goes, oh, geez, okay, we're back to normal. Okay, well, I don't need to downregulate my metabolism. You gave me my food again. Then all of a sudden on day 4, you go back to a 300 calorie deficit. The body says, damn you. Like, I didn't know you were going to do that. And it wasn't ready. So you still get another kind of boost of fat loss. So what we typically aim to do is to have caloric cycling when we do contest prep diets. And the reason why this is important is because it creates a caloric deficit that we need for fat loss, but it prevents adaptation response by the metabolism. So in podcast 173, we talk about the need for caloric cycling during diets. So we talk about the benefits of it in that when you do caloric cycling, you prevent your body from adjusting to the lowest caloric intake because you're never consistently low. You are low on average over time to get fat loss, but you're not consistently low every day. So typically with contest prep diets, like you'll see people have like refeed days, which is a day where they're eating more calories than kind of normal. And they'll have those 2, maybe even 3 times a week. So for example, one of the pro card diets I wrote for somebody, we had 2 high days where they were actually 100 or 200 above their maintenance level. We had 3 medium days, which was actually about 100 to 200 below maintenance level. Then we had 1 or 2 days a week, depending on how they felt, where we were ridiculously, severely, incredibly low. And that was used to kind of spark some fat loss and kind of piss off the body. But then right after that, we had a high day. Now, would you say the high day is going to cause fat storage? Yes, it may. However, we were ensuring that they always had muscle damage on that day. So even though they were eating 100 or 200 calories above maintenance, they were actually doing muscle damaging workouts on those days, whereas on the ultra low days, they weren't doing workouts, so there was no muscle damage. So although the caloric swing looks large, we were actually using our active, like our metabolic activity, okay, the response to training, to kind of work with the caloric cycling. So we had food intake cycling, and then we had muscle recovery caloric usage cycling. So there was 2 layers of caloric cycling going on, so that way we never put them at risk of under recovery from their workouts, and we never put them at risk of just being kind of generally unhealthy and with having the calories being too low, with energy demands too high from post-workout recovery, to where their joints would hurt, or their body kind of gets fatigued, or you have any kind of like big, issues with like colds or anything like that during the recovery, during the prep. So a typical example of most common people is they'll have 7 days a week where they eat a certain amount that's typically in a deficit, and then they have 1 day a week where they have like a cheat meal or fun food, and that's supposed to kind of throw them out of their lower caloric intake. The reason why that kind of works for most people is, number one, they'll do it. So the best diet is only the diet that you'll actually do. So you can say, well, that's not actually the best way to do it. Yeah, but if the person isn't going to do the best way, and then this is the only way they'll do it, then this is the best way. Okay? So eating having 7 days a week being slightly below maintenance level, and then 1 spiking day, is that the best? No. But do people actually willing to do that? Yes. So that's what you do. So you can talk about till you're blue in the face what's the best diet in the world, but if people don't follow it, it doesn't mean shit. Now, I have people all the time tell me they'll follow the strictest diet. Well, I'll do what you tell me. Bullshit. No, you won't. Okay, it's only the people who do contests and compete that they actually listen. So very rarely does anyone actually do a strict diet unless there's one hell of a sense of motivation behind it. So I have people tell me all the time that they're following the diet, but yet they don't eat the meals at the right time. Then you're not following the diet. They tell me they're following the diet, but they overeat meals at night. Then you're not following the diet. They tell me they're following the diet, but they eat extra food or drink extra calories here or there. Then you're not following the diet. So you only follow diets if you actually listen to every aspect of the diet. But that is a typical way that you can get prevent caloric metabolism adjustment is by doing a high day or a cheat meal per week. So if you're a competition client, raise your standards and do better than this. But if you're a regular fat loss person, okay, and this is a stretch, this is stressful for you, you have a million other demands on you, and you're just trying to get a harness on your health, even if it's not the best way in the world, but this is the best you can do, and you've accepted it and you're fine with that, totally awesome, great, okay. I only get fired up when people say one thing, but they don't do it. So if you know that this is the best you're going to be able to do, and you're happy with that because you don't want to lose other priorities in your life, such as relationships and work, awesome. That's fine. That's incredibly intelligent. So yay for you for actually understanding priorities in life. That's freaking awesome. I celebrate that all the time, and that's actually how I work with most of my clients. Okay, so most most of my fat loss based clients, like general health clients, is we're going to be focusing on kind of a consistent day-to-day intake so they get normal habits built up. And then once or twice a week, we might have a really low day, or once or twice a week, we might have a high day. But we keep it simple compared to our contest clients, which are going to have more complexity. However, we do simplify the food complexity by using cycling of metabolic recovery through muscle damage. Okay? So, hopefully this was helpful to get this under wraps of does our metabolism downregulate to low caloric intake? Yes. Okay. Does that happen when we miss a single meal? No. It's still not good to miss a single meal. But when we miss a single meal, all we really do is just kind of mess up fat loss process for the day. When you have caloric restriction for days on end, and then all of a sudden you have that sensation of cravings going away, that's when you're in danger. And that's when the metabolism is most likely downregulating. Okay? So if you do a contest prep diet, make sure that you're not just doing a bunch of stupid ass cardio and eating less and less. You should be able to eat a lot of food. My number one complaint I have of competition clients is they don't like to eat all the food I tell them to eat. And yet they still show up shredded and do great in competitions. Okay? So make sure you're eating a lot, make sure you're active a lot. Do things that cause muscle damage. You'll look your best, feel your best, and it'll actually be a fun, loving process, not a hated process. Okay? So, in general, for everybody, if hopefully this helps, okay, give you some more information on how to set up correct dieting and what are good expectations. So, if you've tried to lose weight before and you kind of just always felt like crap, you felt super weak, or you lost strength in the gym, you felt like you lost muscle size, anything. So, if you've done a diet and it didn't work the way you expected, and you believed that you did it right, reach out to us and we're happy to help, okay? So we appreciate you investing the last 28 minutes and 40 seconds of your life into this podcast, and we want to make sure you get something from it. So if you have trouble, if you have any questions, always reach out to us. Our email is brutalironGym@gmail.com. We can look over what you're currently doing, give you some advice. Obviously, we can help with nutrition plans and whatnot, but we're happy to just answer some questions and help out, okay? So email us at brutalironGym@gmail.com. Now, if you don't mind, please share the podcast at some point with a family member or friend. So if you feel like the podcast is helpful, please spread the word about it. So I still get questions all the time about people asking questions that are related to podcast topics. And the more information we can share with people, the better. So if you can just share it with one person, that's super duper helpful, and it'll make the world a better place, because we'll have more and more people knowing the healthier, right way to eat in order to live their healthiest and happiest life, okay? So please share it if you don't mind. And then also, if you like this information, you can find more from us on our social media channels of Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at the name Brutal Iron Gym. And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, like the person did in this podcast, if you have any questions, anything you want us to answer, okay, reach out to us and let us know what it is. So the podcast is for you, so we want to know what you want to learn about. So just tell us at our email at brutalirongym@gmail.com. Okay, as always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening. And thank you for watching.